Hi, Vicky.
Hello.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for joining me this morning.
Okay. Thanks, Bill, for inviting me today. I was surprised to be called an activist, but yeah, I guess I am an activist because I'm delivering a service for deaf people, and so how did I get here? So I started 12 years ago. I trained as an institute because I was really interested in working with deaf people and hearing people as well. I wanted to, because my dad went to counselling myself, and I found that the hearing therapists weren't aware of the cultural and about the challenges, the barriers that I've been through. And so I didn't feel that it was um, suitable for myself. So I thought to myself, well, how do deaf people access counselling? So I thought, no, this is something I want to do.
Mm.
To explore. So I started to explore and found that there were very few deaf counsellors in the UK.
Okay.
So I went on the course, and it was a 4-year master's psychotherapy course. But it was very challenging because it was difficult to get disabled student allowance. It was difficult to get any support with communication. So to give you a snapshot of what it was like, I used to sit in the middle of a room of 20 people I sit in the middle, on my bottom, on the floor. Everyone would be sat round and I would have to swivel around trying to lip read
Wow.
what people were saying. So that went on for a few years and I missed quite a lot, obviously. We didn't have Otter, we
No.
didn't have Zoom, it was all face to face. And so anyway, I managed to get through the training, but it was challenging. And then when I started working, I found out that I could only work with hearing people because I couldn't get a placement for a few years with deaf people. So that was really hard because I wanted to offer my services. So it was only when I got my diploma that I finally could work with deaf people. But that was like a few years on. So my
Yes.
placement was in hearing organisation, working with hearing people. And luckily, I'm able to because I can speak and I've got hearing aids, and my speech is quite clear, I think.
Yep.
And so I think it was easier for me. But again, I thought, many deaf people were not able to have a placement or work in a hearing organisation. So
Yeah.
I recognise my privilege there, my hearing privilege, if you like.
Yes.
So, I managed to get the diploma, and then I could start working with deaf people. And so I started working for a bigger organisation, but then it meant again I couldn't accrue many hours, client hours, because I had to drive to the client, and sometimes it'd be an hour and a half there to get to a client, and then an hour and a half back just to see one client. So,
Wow.
so one morning, taking up with one client, and then I would drive somewhere else to see another client. It's just so again, I was thinking, well, there's only 2 clients, or one if I'm lucky, per day. But I could have in my private practice, because I set up private practice and I've got hearing clients coming. So for 5 hearing clients, I have one, So again, I was thinking, they didn't write.
No.
Here I am as a deaf therapist. I want to offer my my work, my knowledge, my expertise to deaf people. So, 2016, so I started training in 2007, so 2016, I started to think about, well, for a few years actually, thinking, oh, maybe I should set up an organisation and offer private online sort of therapy using remote. So that's definitely. We've offered face-to-face, so as well, but I think the remote has been much more accessible.
Of course, 100%.
And because it means we could reach deaf people all around the UK. Now, the way it worked is it was quite slow to start with because people hadn't heard about it and they weren't sure who we were. But word got round, and then eventually the NHS started to notice. I'm the head board in Wales and some parts of the UK, and I started to ask us about, you know, who we are, what we do. So we moved on. So we offered, you know, counselling to. So we had a team originally of about 6 counsellors, and then we grew. Now we've got a team of 13 counsellors and psychotherapists, and 8 of us are deaf. I wanted to give deaf people counsellors or psychotherapists more work as well as myself, because like I told you, I was driving, you know, there was a lot of driving around. Whereas now we can just work from the comfort of our home with a laptop or, you know, and an internet connection. So we've actually given deaf counsellors much more work. So it's increasing the employment rate. And the idea is delivering counselling or therapy to deaf people too who need it. So so that's the history really. So in 2019 I won the Daliot Award, which is £30,000.
Wow, congrats.
Yeah, it was big surprise. I was so shocked. It was the Disabled Entrepreneur of the Year. Because I told Daliot my business model, and my partner and I, that's the business model, delivered it to Daliot, and I won £30,000. Now this meant that we could improve our computer system, so it's much more NHS favourable, if you like, secure. Yeah, and it's given us such a boost as well, to be recognised, to be trusted and everything. So it's been an amazing journey, and I'm really proud of the team that we created. And it was created through frustration, because deaf people could not access counselling easily in the past. I had to go via the GP, and then the GP often doesn't have a relationship with the deaf person because of communication barriers. Often have to book an interpreter, and then the interpreting booking system is atrocious. It takes so long to book an interpreter, and often they may not turn up. So we've had so many stories of clients just not having a relationship with the GP in the first place. So this is what we have on our system, is a self-referral.
Right.
So a deaf person can self-refer. On our system, we have a accessible BSL assessment form. And so, yeah, they just fill in. So the GP gets the referral form.
Yes.
And we do an assessment, and then we send it off to the GP. And then the GP will start to have a relationship with the client, knowing what's on this form. And we encourage them to get an interpreter, which can often take a while. But do you understand? So we're just
Yeah, I'm really struck by how Deaf for Deaf is you're improving the relationship with general practitioners. That's huge.
Yeah,
Through your referral system where you are holding the potential client and then involving the GP, that's massive. Like it must be so liberating for someone who, I imagine, a lot of the deaf community struggle with accessing their primary healthcare services.
yeah. In our team, we so I would say we have three. I think three hearing. Yeah, so they would be perhaps people that are sort of deafened.
Okay.
So we often don't know to as well. So or even people with hard of hearing.
Yes.
So then we offer that service as well. So we offer the service across the whole spectrum of deafness.
Right.
So hard of hearing to BFD,
Yeah.
and that's the idea that they would come in and we will offer a cultural sort of match service.
Yes. Yeah.
That makes sense. So that's something that's really important, and a lot of them just think, when I see my deaf clients, they always think, wow, this is so important to me. And they share experiences of having an interpreter, and they've just said it's just, how can you, we know as counsellors or therapists, we need to be in the room with each other, looking at each other, and, the transactions, full of empathy and bodily and really being there. But if you've got an interpreter, I think it should break up that dynamic, because
Yeah.
in the relationship we heal. That's my philosophy. We heal in the relationship.
Yes.
So if you have an interpreter who's trying to do this, for me, it might be okay for some deaf people, because the idea is give them a choice. Yeah, so if they want to use an interpreter, that's fine, because some are really comfortable with that, because they may not be comfortable having a deaf therapist, because they think the deaf therapist might know them, because the deaf community is really small. So even though we are professionally confined with our ethics and everything, but still there's a mistrust issue that can happen, and that's understandable. But we are trying to break that by showing that this is a professional organisation that are dealing with the confidentiality. And so when they do come, they go, oh, I'm not sure about this. I often get that. They go, I'm not sure. But once they're in it, they go, and they're like, and they go, wow, I've never had this before. And also, another thing is to tell you, geographically, we're all over the UK. So we have one in Wales, one in Scotland, North West. So that's because the deaf community is very small.
Yes.
So often, if I encounter my area, they might know me, so they might not want to. And I get that. I wouldn't do it as well, but if I can see someone up in the northwest or in Scotland,
So you cross areas.
Yeah.
Cross over.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because we give the client the choice in choosing the counsellor as well.
Okay. That's
okay.
Yeah.
So we offer both NHS, but not all areas. Like I told you, some areas will allow and fund the deaf therapy, some won't.
Right.
And that's just a bridge that we've got to cross, maybe a year or two, maybe, but some have said no, we will never work with deaf service, because I want to use interpreting. So that's that. Also, we offer a low-cost private therapy service as well. So something that all of us we offer, low cost. So we have a package which is very popular as well. So most of them are integrated. One of them had just done a DFD course. counselling body person. I think it's changed now. They've changed the name recently because we know that we have to be going. Well, we're not going down the IAPTIS route, but
Yeah.
just to have some IAPTIS training because one of our counselors worked in the NHS part time.
Ah,
So,
okay.
so she's managed to get this IAPTIS trained. So that's DFD. One is DIT.
Yeah.
A few, yeah, most of them are integrator, yeah. So we've all been trained at different places. I think there's three about the psychotherapy. So yeah, and that's myself, one of them. So yeah, it's been a long time getting there though.
That
Because
sounds incredible. I mean, to have the NHS on board with something that sounds much more representative of our counseling and psychotherapy community, that's a serious achievement. Like, well done. That really is quite impressive. If someone as a deaf person wanted to train, this is a random question top of my head, where do you think nowadays would be accessible? What kind of platform? I mean, if it was all online, they could use Otter.
oh
Like,
yeah, that
yeah,
would be a really good idea to do it online. I mean, through Zoom, you know, I've been able to access all the CPD
yeah,
courses and well, events and conferences. I went to my first TA conference at the end of last year, first ever. And I've been training for many years now. So, but I couldn't go to a conference before because I can't lip read all the speakers or
yeah.
communicate in loud noises. I can't. It's impossible. And you know, very difficult to get an interpreter. But whereas with the conference, I was able to access because I could read the subtitles and have it on speaker view so I can see everyone talking and trying it, but it wasn't perfect, of course.
No.
I mean, I still missed quite a lot. So I think, yeah, I think that is a really good way for the future is to allow online training for deaf people through interpreted accessibility. Right now, they're not accessible because many colleges don't provide interpreted, difficult to book, like I mentioned before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also it's making the course material accessible too, because everything some of the language that's used is quite heavy, and I think if it was interpreted, you know, for some deaf people who are BSR, meaning their first language is BSR, they should be having all this material translated into BSR. Yeah, that makes sense. But
Yeah, yeah,
well, but
yeah.
that is possible.
I'm just
Well,
thinking, sorry, we've got some lag, I think. I'm just thinking if we're I'm starting my TA core training in September, but if we're in the depths of TA and we're talking about, you know, the interjected this or the interjected that, does that stuff translate well if we were to be sitting in a class together with an interpreter, or would they have to be possibly someone like you who is already trained and an interpreter or trained in BSL?
yeah, I think that would be better, yeah, to have a deaf person or a deaf therapist and trainer as well as an interpreter. So you could have a bit of both, couldn't you? You could have the hearing trainer plus the deaf, because the deaf person would be able to ensure that the material is understood
Right.
by BSR to the trainees.
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of organisations, counselling or any organisation should provide this really, rather than relying on automated. Although it's a lot cheaper,
Yeah.
but I think,
Yeah, I guess so.
there need to be, as I've said in previous talks about, each organisation should think about financial accessibility, allowing all your videos everything, you know, everything you do or provide to the public, please put subtitles on, but in the accurate way, not automated accurately. Does that mean paying more?
Yes.
And that means having a budget to provide accessibility. So important, because we're often not even thought about, we just push it down. And I'm always constantly, you know, on Twitter saying, can you put captions down, subtitles?
Yeah, I've seen you.
It's
I've
just
seen you.
tiring to do this all the time. It's just like an afterthought. And I want to be an afterthought. There are so many deaf people now in the UK. You know, I think it's 1 in 6 are hard of hearing now or deaf. So there's a lot of people to consider. I just want to be able to ensure that we keep going. And with the IACTA, with the dope stuff going on in the future, that's a bit of a worry, really.
Yes.
We hoping that we carry on being what we call sort of a deaf focused service, culturally linguistic accessible service. So all I want is for us to carry on, and our team to increase the number.
Yes.
And have more deaf trainees in counselling. And I know a few now, which is great news. So I hope to have them on the team in the future. And for really the NHS to recognise the value of our service. So I'm not really asking for much more, really, just to carry on and expand into different areas of the UK that we're not able to meet. I mean, with the NHS England, they're making changes now with the IACTA, and you know that could be difficult for us. So that's why I really appreciate you and some of the people on Twitter that I've met over the last year who have really been very supportive, you know, and they've given me strength to carry on. You know, I really appreciate that. That, you know, everyone that's been in contact with me and really pushed me. I mean, it's quite lonely being here, you know, trying to fight for this, and to be seen, to be visible. And I just think, you know, with all you supporting, that gives me chance. So I really, really appreciate that. Okay, I think basically maybe you subtitle after. I mean, I think like I think Zoom was fantastic.
Yes.
Zoom remote therapy very adaptable. But if you meet face to face in the future, we have to be in a room where it's really quiet, no noise in the background, good lighting. Also lip read, make sure you're lip readable. Yeah, all of those things. Maybe and asking them what they need. You know, what do they need? Let them guide as well, guide you. But yeah, that's the thing I would ask, just ask them what they need. And if they want to have someone who uses BSR, or then give them the choice, let them go and find a way in to that. Maybe ask them if they're comfortable with having an interpreter, because you might have, because if you're in an area that only used interpreted counselling, ask them if they're comfortable with that. Don't just assume that this is the right way.
Yeah.
Just ask them, are you comfortable with me in the room with an interpreter? And let's see how this works. And if you feel it's not working, perhaps do something about it. You know, try and guide them to maybe support them with a letter to the GP or the DTG. You know, just a
second. So yeah, I'm touched by this whole conversation, especially, you know, the idea of, challenging what I believe about BSL and how it allows you to access conversations. And this tapping into the right side of the brain, it's huge. It's like seeing something in color when you've only had black and white, though even that as a metaphor doesn't meet it. But another thing that I'm really touched by is another parallel this month with April is that it's Autism Awareness Month. And there is lots of stuff, lots of great stuff online about ASD and awareness and Asperger's and education and therapy. But there's some older narratives that persevere, that are about fixing it and about finding the cause and about medicalizing it and making it a problem and a disease. And I'm sensing a parallel with children who are born deaf or people who are deafened by illness, that the first response is always to fix it and to medicalize it and make it a problem. And that in there is a missed opportunity to embrace it and work on acceptance, and possibly even an element and a system by which you are re-traumatizing that person who is deaf by taking them to hospital, having cochlear implants. And that will be something that comes up in therapy, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would say 90 to 95% of hearing parents that have deaf children, yeah, they're often straight away advised by the medical professionals to go down the auditory route, to go down the cochlear implant route, to go down to the language speaking. But what about the, like you said, the embracing of the BSL and sort of enlarging their world, if you like, having the visual aspect, but they're just going towards this. And so to me, that's really damaging in some way. I mean, of course, it might be good for some, but there's some that are not able to access language that way because they're just being denied the visual aspect, and it's all focus. And so and so when we get clients, we often hear the trauma of not being able to speak properly, of not being able to follow conversations, not being able to have good relationships with their family. There's so much communication isolation for deaf people. And even myself, you know, in my family, I was always left out, always struggling to follow. But it wasn't my family's fault. It's the medical professionals who told them, you must do this, and so they did. But now I know they wish they had given me BSL as well, so they can, you know, so anyway, yeah, so something, we are seeing a lot of traumatized deaf people who are trained from their family, and they've missed out on that attachment.
Yes.
And missed out on family experiences. It's called the dinner table syndrome. I don't know if you've heard that, where a deaf person sitting there and everyone's yakking away, you know. They're missing out on all the incidental learning. So, yeah, it's a really big issue that we see.
It's massive.
It's massive.
Yeah.
And I think they need to be given them both, you know, let them have the spoken, written language, auditory means, if they want to, you know.
Yes.
Or,
Agency.
but please give them the access, the visual aspect. But that's a long way to go. Because, yeah. So I think it's really important that you brought that up.
Agency from the beginning, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was growing up, there wasn't many deaf role models because I went to an oral school. So when I arrived at school, there was some kids who were from deaf families, but the majority of us had hearing families, and we were fascinated that they had full access, you know, in their families. That wow, you know, the BSL, it was like, but it was frowned upon. And I remember feeling so upset and this is no, this is not fair. How we can be frowned upon. We weren't even allowed to dine at school. So we don't learn to, yeah, I know. You need to learn about autism, which is the fact that they think that speaking is more superior than dining. So anyway, it still goes on now in the oral school.
That's really, yeah, that's, I have nothing to say back to that. That's awful.
I learned sign language when I was 35. I learned it before a little bit through school with my friends, like haphazardly, like grab here, grab, but it wasn't like full BSL. We done when I started to meet some deaf people, and they were like standing, and I was like, I don't understand, and I felt so like cross and angry, like thinking, well, why do I understand? Why was this language not given to me? Why? I was furious. So I thought, right, I'm going to learn it. And once I started learning it, I thought, oh my goodness, this is what I've missed. And yeah, so that's where the journey is. And this is the case for many of us, the deaf community, really. Because like it said, 90% or 95 of deaf children have hearing families, hearing parents.
This has been the most incredible chat. I'm so grateful. Yeah, I'm really touched. It's been really fantastic speaking to you today, and thank you.
Thank you for inviting me, and I hope that the audience will like listening to what I've had to offer today. But yeah, I'm really in this activism now today. I'm in that mood, although it can be so exhausting, can't it?
Yeah.
And sometimes I want to sit back and just not do it, but I can't. I've just got to keep going. And that means people behind me, all these deaf trainees, deaf counsellors, the younger ones, they're going to have a much easier time. So I'm pleased, hopefully, with guys like you, who's supporting and being aware.
Awareness is key,
Absolutely. So thanks for the chat. And yeah. Okay.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.